On May 14th, 2011, one of the most powerful men in the world was escorted off an Air France plane at JFK Airport in handcuffs, his reputation shattered, his political career in ruins, and the future of global finance thrown into turmoil. Dominique Strauss Kahn, the head of the International Monetary Fund and the man tipped to become the next president of France, was accused of sexual assault in a New York hotel room. What happened inside Suite 2806 of the Sofitel Hotel was more than a scandal. It was a collision of sex, power, and politics that ended in one of the most dramatic downfalls of the 21st century. Before the world knew him for scandal, Dominique, often referred to as DSK, was one of France's brightest political stars. Born in 1949 in Neuilly-sur-Seine, Strauss Kahn studied economics and law, quickly building a reputation as a sharp intellect and a skillful negotiator. By the 1990s, he had already risen through the ranks of French politics. As Minister of Economy and Finance under Prime Minister Lionel Jospin, Strauss Kahn played a central role in preparing France for the launch of the euro, Europe's ambitious common currency. His combination of academic brilliance and political savvy made him a heavyweight within the Socialist Party. By 2007, his career reached the international stage. Backed by France, he was appointed managing director of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. At the time, the IMF was under fire, accused of being out of touch and ineffective. DSK transformed it. When the global financial crisis hit in 2008, he pushed the IMF into the spotlight, mobilizing massive rescue packages and emergency loans. To many, he was a savior of the global economy. By 2010, Strauss Kahn wasn't just a technocrat. He was widely seen as the man who could challenge Nicolas Sarkozy for the French presidency in 2012. Polls placed him as the Socialist Party's best hope, leading by double digits. Charismatic, cosmopolitan, and with international prestige, DSK embodied the image of a global statesman. In Paris, he was whispered about as the president-in-waiting, but those who knew him also spoke about another side. Rumors of womanizing followed him for years. French tabloids reported on affairs, accusations of inappropriate behavior, even whispers of aggression. Within Parisian political circles, it was an open secret. But in France, where the private lives of politicians were often treated as off-limits, these rumors never derailed his career. That would all change on one spring day in New York City. It was a Saturday afternoon. Strauss Kahn was staying in Suite 2806 of the Sofitel Hotel in Midtown Manhattan, preparing to board a flight back to Paris later that day. At around 12 o'clock noon, Nafisato Jaolu, a 32-year-old housekeeper, originally from Guinea, entered the suite to clean. What happened next would ignite an international firestorm. According to Diallo's testimony, Strauss Kahn emerged naked from the bathroom. She alleged that he chased her through the suite, forced her into a corner, and sexually assaulted her. Terrified, she fled and reported the incident to hotel staff, who immediately called the police. Strauss Kahn left the hotel quickly, heading for JFK Airport to catch Air France Flight 23. He had lunch with his daughter, then boarded the plane. But before it could take off, Port Authority police entered, pulled him from first class, and arrested him. Images of the IMF chief in handcuffs, exhausted and disheveled, dominated the news. For a man tipped to become president, it was a devastating image. The arrest sent shockwaves through politics and finance. Here was the head of the IMF, a man with access to world leaders, suddenly accused of a violent sex crime. World markets trembled. The Eurozone was still in crisis, with Greece, Ireland, and Portugal depending on IMF bailouts. Overnight, the stability of global financial negotiations was thrown into doubt. In France, the news hit like an earthquake. The Socialist Party, which had quietly prepared for Strauss Kahn's presidential run, was stunned. Nicolas Sarkozy, facing low approval ratings, saw his most dangerous rival collapse in disgrace. The scandal wasn't just a legal battle, it was a geopolitical event. On May 16th, Strauss Kahn was arraigned in Manhattan criminal court. Prosecutors charged him with attempted rape, sexual abuse, and unlawful imprisonment. If convicted, he faced up to 25 years in prison. The images shocked the world. Dominique Strauss Kahn, once rubbing shoulders with presidents and kings, now standing behind glass in a New York courtroom, head bowed. Judge Melissa Jackson denied him bail, calling him a flight risk. Strauss Kahn was sent to New York's infamous Rikers Island jail. 4 days. He remained there, isolated and humiliated, until his lawyers negotiated a $1 million bail, a $5 million bond, and strict house arrest in a Manhattan townhouse. The terms were draconian: 24-hour armed guards, electronic monitoring, limited visitors. For a man who had controlled billions of dollars and moved freely across the globe, it was a stunning reversal of fortune. Nofisatu Diallo gave her account to prosecutors. She described a violent encounter, insisting she had been forced into oral sex. Physical evidence supported part of her story. Medical reports showed injuries consistent with her testimony. But Strauss Kahn's legal team mounted an aggressive defense. They claimed the encounter was consensual. They highlighted inconsistencies in Diallo's statements, pointing to alleged lies in her asylum application years earlier. The case began to unravel. Prosecutors admitted that Diallo had changed parts of her story. Though they still believed a sexual encounter had taken place, her credibility was severely damaged. By August 2011, Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance announced he could not pursue the case. The criminal charges were dropped. Legally, Strauss Kahn walked free. But politically, his career was destroyed. In France, voters who once saw him as the man to beat Sarkozy now viewed him with suspicion and disgust. Polls showed his popularity collapse. The Socialist Party distanced itself, moving to new candidates. By 2012, François Hollande had emerged as the party's nominee, and eventually the next president of France. Strauss Kahn resigned from the IMF just days after his arrest, replaced by Christine Lagarde. His global influence vanished overnight. Though he avoided prison, the Sofitel scandal ended his career. In December 2012, Strauss Kahn reached a civil settlement with Nafissatou Diallo. The terms were confidential, but reports suggested he paid around $1.5 million. But his troubles didn't end there. In 2012, he was charged in France in connection with a prostitution ring known as the Carlton Affair. He admitted attending sex parties but claimed he didn't know prostitutes were involved. In 2015, he was acquitted, but his reputation sank even further. The once favored presidential candidate became a symbol of excess, arrogance, and scandal. After the collapse of his career, Strauss Kahn withdrew from politics. He turned to consulting, advising governments and companies on financial issues. He married again, lived partly in Morocco, and rarely appeared in French public life. But every public appearance reminded the world of his fall from grace. In 2020, a French documentary, Chambre 2806 Année l'affaire de SK, revisited the case, bringing the scandal back into headlines and sparking fresh debate about power, privilege, and sexual misconduct. The case of Dominique Strauss Kahn remains one of the most infamous political scandals of modern times. Though criminal charges were dropped, the image of the IMF chief in handcuffs remains seared into history. It destroyed a man who could have become president of France. It reshaped French politics, and it revealed how power, sex, and secrecy can collide in ways that change the course of nations. For Strauss Kahn, it was the end of ambition. For Nafissatou Diallo, it was the beginning of a long struggle for recognition and justice. And for the world, it was a stark reminder that no man, not even the chief of the IMF, nor a president-in-waiting, is untouchable. The fall of Dominique Strauss Kahn began in a New York hotel room, but its shockwaves rippled across the globe. One moment, he was the most powerful man in international finance. The next, he was a prisoner at Rikers Island. Suite 2806 became a symbol of arrogance, of abuse, and of how quickly power can evaporate. Because when the doors close and the truth comes out, even the mightiest can fall.